Mortal Kombat 1 is the newest game from NetherRealm Studios and is directed by none other than Ed Boon.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It is technically the 12th mainline Mortal Kombat game, however, they just like to reboot and nostalgia bait every now and then. Mortal Kombat has become known for having a very well-presented story and having some of the best top-of-the-line graphics, and this game definitely delivers on visuals inside of combat and within most of the modes that it has. At least that's on the PS5 version anyway. We're just gonna banish the Switch version to the NetherRealm, I think. So we'll be talking about story spoilers later on in the video, however I want to switch it up and start out by talking about the gameplay first. This game is a little bit more of a fast-paced Mortal Kombat, however it still does have the dial-a-combo system where you link multiple different combos into each other and try to link them with special moves and whatnot. I feel like if you already didn't like Mortal Kombat system, this game isn't going to win you over in any new sort of way. It has a lot of the same things you're used to seeing, like X-rays, fatalities, brutalities. However, it does add this cameo system where you have a second fighter and they come in using a special move designated on what input you put in. It's a little similar to stuff you would see in Marvel vs. Capcom or Dragon Ball FighterZ, but they have a little bit more diversity to them, as some characters have more moves that they can do than others, and it's not just one single move. Now, some of these cameos do feel way more stronger than others, but this is most likely just early game knowledge checking and the growing pains that comes with figuring out what each cameo is good at doing. I mean, this is only the first weekend. Now, another way this is similar to Marvel vs. Capcom and Dragon Ball FighterZ is you're going to be putting folks into long combo strings at more advanced levels. And since I'm pretty bad at this game, I've had tons of matchups where my opponent clearly knows what their setups and mix-ups and combos are, and I'm basically just watching them treat me like a practice dummy. And while this is annoying, it mostly just boils down to that's how it is with every fighting game, and you need to get good and start learning your matchups and get that knowledge. So while I do have fun playing this game in small doses online competitively, I tend to enjoy the single player stuff in Mortal Kombat a little bit more, mostly the story mode and sometimes doing towers depending on how many crazy modifiers I have going on. And overall, the story mode is fun. It's a little silly and has its cheesy moments, but that's part of the Mortal Kombat charm, I feel, and it's got some neat scenarios, and while I thought the story itself was really interesting at first, it just really lost me after a while as it unraveled and became a big multiverse bomb.
What in the actual fuck?
Good evening, Johnny Cage.
At first I was really liking this idea of Liu Kang becoming the Titan of Time and changing things for peace, which basically just means Shang Tsung and Quan Chi are gonna have normal peasant lives, but that ultimately gets foiled. He also changed the rules of Mortal Kombat to where the participants no longer kill each other, which, okay.
No tournament participant has ever been grievously injured or killed.
And most of the characters are now seen in a different light. I won't list them all, but Raiden is basically a brand new character now who gets his powers over thunder from an amulet.
Holy Ark of the Covenant.
Scorpion is no longer Hanzo Asashi, but instead he is Kuai Liang, who traditionally was the second Sub-Zero, making these once rivals, now brothers. Baraka's Tarkat is no longer a race, but is now a disease.
We are victims of Tarkat. The disease is not easily gotten.
Reptile is thankfully no longer a weird stinky lizard man, and now he is a lizard man who can turn into a cute TikTok boy. And they actually made Baraka and Reptile way more heroic than before, and I thought it was kind of cool seeing them be actually heroic for once. And then this time around, General Shao and Raiko are basically the punching bags that you beat up all the time for fodder fights.
Incoming stock villain.
Now, despite Liu Kang's best efforts as Titan of Time, conflict still happens, and someone starts messing with the events in his timeline, making Shang Tsung and Quan Chi like and subscribe to my channel, which then allows them to once again become powerful, evil wizard dudes.
You're welcome, sorcerers.
They kind of tee up that it was someone from the past timeline, which Mortal Kombat 11, who somehow survived Liu Kang's remake and is stirring the pot a little bit, and I find that plot to be a little bit better than what actually happened. They then start teeing up that there could be two timelines going on, Titan Liu Kang's and an evil one that was created by Titan Shang Tsung, who is the culprit in stirring up the pot in Liu Kang's current timeline. Then I was like, okay, this could be kind of cool. We have Titan Liu Kang and Titan Shang Tsung, and they're probably just going to be raging war against each other, and their timelines are going to fight, and that's going to be kind of the premise of the new Mortal Kombat. Then it gets revealed there's a Titan Katana and a Titan Raiden, and I kind of thought, okay, are they just going to give the original cast and make them all Titans now, as a way to kind of respect and immortalize them more or less? And these Titan versions of the original cast would just wage Mortal Kombat in each other, but using fighters from their universes, more or less replacing the concept of realms with timelines.
I will tell you. But first, we must gather more of our old friends.
But instead, they go full balls to the wall crazy. You basically find out everyone and their dog was able to beat Kronika in Mortal Kombat 11, and now there's infinite timelines with infinite versions of infinite characters. Titan Shang Tsung and Titan Liu Kang basically recruit giant armies of these Titan characters, and they end up reenacting Mortal Kombat Armageddon. Kind of feels like somebody watched Endgame a little too much. Now, this final chapter did have some funny moments, and you do fight some interesting characters like Katana Khan and a Cyber Smoke, and I even fought a Genderbender Scorpion at one point, and there's a bunch of others, but then after a while you just start fighting weird fusions, and it felt kind of odd to me. Like, is this going to be the next gimmick Mortal Kombat uses now, is fusions? So basically now Mortal Kombat story has left us with this weird multiverse of Mortal Kombat, and basically they can just do whatever they want with any character, and to me that just comes off as weak storytelling. And I was actually kind of hoping this game would actually be a reboot, seeing familiar characters in new ways with new threats, and it's actually what it started out as. Instead though, it just slowly devolved into nostalgia bait for Deadly Alliance, Mortal Kombat Armageddon, and gave us this goofy multiverse of Mortal Kombat where any fanfic writer can come up with anything and it makes perfect sense now. I would maybe feel better if it was only the original cast that were all made into Titans with their own timelines, but they just made it a free-for-all. That said, the story does leave us with two-ish cliffhangers, one that I think will probably end up being DLC. The one that I think will end up being DLC is going to focus on Scorpion and Sub-Zero, since Bi-Han Sub-Zero has taken the Lin Kuei and betrayed Titan Liu Kang, since Titan Shang Tsung basically gave him a dragon army so he could take over the world. Which, I'm not even really 100% sure that army's still around with Shang Tsung being defeated, but who knows. The motive though is that Bi-Han is a greedy little dick, and he's just a generic bad guy and wants to rule the world. There's really nothing special there. Because of this though, Scorpion did set up the Shiho Ryu, and we probably will find out what happens to Hanzo, and maybe some of the Special Forces characters will get brought in, which I'm kind of glad they weren't really involved in the main story. But it would make sense if Bi-Han's attacking the world, they might get involved. But I think this would probably wrap up with us ultimately defeating Bi-Han and him becoming Noob Sabat. Maybe a cyber version if they want to spice it up, but I guess it doesn't really matter because that could just happen in another timeline, so who cares? The second cliffhanger they give us is Titan Havoc, along with some other Titans, basically fell in love with the chaos that happened in the Armageddon final battle, and they want to recreate the chaos, which I could maybe see him being Titan Liu Kang's new antagonist, but they could just have a fresh army of Titan Shang Tsungs whenever they want now, so it doesn't matter. It could also just mean that the next Mortal Kombat game might have more of the fusions and be more chaotic, but I think it kind of really just bleeds into the next mode, which is the Invasion mode. The Invasion mode is the new single-player content that comes with this game, aside from the story mode and towers, and this is a season-based thing that lasts 45 days, and it is free, so thank goodness for that. The premise here is another timeline invades our timeline, and for this first one, it's Titan Hanzo Scorpion. He wants to be reunited with his wife, but he keeps finding her dead in every single timeline. And of course she's alive in our timeline, but she's married to the new Kuai Liang Scorpion, so as classic Scorpion would do, he's pissed off and basically burning everything in his path. So this mode looks like Mario Party, but it's essentially just a glorified tower where you explore a map and you have to waste time walking in between fights, which is really annoying. Most of these fights usually give the enemies armor and crazy modifiers and stats, and as you progress more and more, they keep giving you crazy and crazier modifiers, which gets pretty annoying, and some of the fights honestly don't even feel like they last more than a few seconds. This mode also feels oddly quiet, as none of the characters really interact with each other, which is also an issue I have in some other game modes as well, outside of story mode. You do fight a boss in each of these messes, but they're kind of silly because they just have a lot of armor and phases, and usually one of the phases is you just have to dodge a bunch of projectiles and your health will roll over into the next round, and none of this I feel really helps you learn the game in any way, and it just feels like a bunch of fluff. And additionally, you get a bunch of gear and pickups here, but since this first season is about Scorpion and fire and burning and scorching, basically all of the gear is like orange and yellow, and a lot of it just looks like crap on most characters, and I don't really want most of it at all. You do get a lot of the seasonal currency, which is what I'm hoping will roll over since I don't really want many of these rewards, but this mode just overall feels super grindy, and that's what it is. It's a 45-day grind fest, and it needs a lot of quality of life changes, such as not limiting the amount of items you can carry and giving you a map. I mean, that's pretty basic, and it also gives you so many of these stupid talismans that aren't really that useful, to be honest. It's just kind of weird. Combat 11 kind of had this, as you had to grind some items to make towers easier, and you did have to unlock fatalities and brutalities in Mortal Kombat 11, which was pretty terrible, but this is just way worse in my opinion. And Invasion mode just really feels devoid and lifeless. You're just running around this Mario Party board game with no real interaction, looking for chests, fighting these unique fighters, and every now and then you get ambushed or find secret fights, but I'm not even sure what those do, or are they just extra rewards? I really don't get why they didn't inject some more personality into this by having the regional bosses talk to you. I get that it costs money, but even if it was just flavor text, I would be fine with that. It just seems like low-hanging fruit. You're kind of just walking around this thing and just hearing a bunch of grunts and squishy sounds, and honestly, you could just listen to your own music or a podcast or something, and it would probably enhance the experience you have. And since everything is crazy modifiers and things, again, it's really not helping you learn the fundamentals of the game at all. And quite frankly, it's just teaching you bad gameplay habits for if you want to go online. You can make the argument that you can practice combos and stuff here, but that's what practice mode's for. But yeah, playing this game mode, it just feels boring after a while. So you still have access to the classic towers, which will give you a nice little story cutscene for whatever character you beat them with in a separate mode. But if you want to do the daily or hourly or weekly towers, you have to do those within invasion mode. But it's super unfriendly how they do this. You actually have to physically walk your character around the Mario Party board game to go to each tower, and you also don't get to see what rewards they offer, which is pretty lame. It just feels like they're wasting a lot of your time here by having you walk around, and it feels like a big step backwards from what was in the previous game. And again, all this feels devoid and lifeless because the characters don't interact with each other. All the fun little quips you would get in Mortal Kombat X and 11, where the characters would interact with each other when they entered into the fight, are all gone from every single mode outside of local co-op. Like, if you played a character and just did a tower, you would basically know nothing about their personality until you beat it and you got the final cutscene. I can understand the removal of these intros from online gameplay, especially Combat League fights, because online warriors gotta get that grind on and they don't have time for silly things like plot. But as a casual player who wants to do towers and stuff, not having these interactions just really lessens the experience. And honestly, I'm probably not ever going to really experience any of these since they're only available on local co-op, and I'm probably not going to be playing locally all that much. I feel like half of the fun of the DLC characters are seeing how they interacted with the Mortal Kombat cast as well as other DLC characters, and now that lovely little charming element is just gone. And the outro, like the intros, are just quick taunts, but with the outros, they all have the same camera angle, and they're just lacking the flair that the Mortal Kombat 11 outros had. I get they're trying to save time by not having them involved, which is why I'm fine with them not being in online play, but not having them in single player content is annoying when they're already wasting your time with so much other pointless things anyway. Like walking in between towers, and whoever's big-brained idea it was to make the shrine only let you put in 1,000 coins at a time, they need to have their job replaced by an AI or a chimp, because I think either of those two things could have thought of something more user-friendly. I mean, it just wastes so much of your time sitting there looking at nothing. I'm assuming this might be because the game has to connect to servers, but give us a notification or something. And this game does have multiple currencies. You have your normal combat coins and your seasonal currencies, which is fine, but there is a whole microtransaction store with limited time purchases, and all that's gross, but that's kind of normal now, unfortunately. I think the competitive players will like this game a little bit more though, because they did make the online much quicker, and it's quicker to fight and quicker to jump in, and the gameplay is a little snappier and feels a little bit better. A lot of this is done by removing intros and outros, but then you can't filter out fights by connection, and you can't reject fighters, so you could be forced to fight someone with terrible internet, which is probably going to waste your time more. And since it's first to 3 online, it's going to take you a little bit before you can get to move on to the next fighter. But most of Mortal Kombat's sales doesn't really come from the competitive players. It comes from the casual players like me who just kind of want to jump in and play through the story and maybe drop in once in a while and check out the new DLC character and see what there's an expansion going on. I mean, it's kind of the cycle of the Mortal Kombat games. You see a huge spike when they first come out and then it just plummets. Now, the idea of invasion mode and having seasonal stories through that does seem like it would be interesting and keep folks returning, especially if the way they do DLC characters is them invading. That would be pretty awesome. But the problem is this mode is completely devoid and lifeless, and there's no interaction between characters, and it teaches you no transferable skills to get into competitive play. It just feels like a lot of weak spots. And while Mortal Kombat definitely has way better presentation and graphics and production in their story mode, the story just really didn't resonate with me when it started becoming about multiverses and everything. It started out really strong and really interesting, but they kind of just doubled down on all the weirdness that MK11 had with timelines and weird stuff, and instead they just evolved it into a whole multiverse now. I am still a little excited for the future to play Homelander and Omni-Man and Peacemaker, but since they don't interact when fighting people in towers and things, it's a little disheartening. I think if you only care about playing online and fighting competitively, this game is maybe an 8 or so. I mean, gameplay-wise, it did fix some of the issues Mortal Kombat 11 had with a lot of the ranged combatants, although Quan Chi is coming, so I'm curious what that's going to end up looking like. But Mortal Kombat 1 does feel way more combo diverse and explorative. The online does have some issues where you fight the same person and you can't filter out by connection, and it does feel like it is missing some more of the basic online features that games currently have. Those are kind of minor, and overall it does play pretty well in quick online because they got rid of the intros. But if you are not playing competitively, you might want to wait until some of the DLC characters come out and they patch a lot of these quality of life things. For me personally, this game is probably about 7.2. It's good, but I don't think it's great. Sure, it looks amazing, and it is kind of fun to play, and the fatalities are always fun to watch, but I didn't like the direction the story went in at all. Invasion mode and towers feel completely lifeless and devoid. PS5 has some sound issues sometimes in some of these modes as well, but it doesn't really matter because nobody's interacting with each other anyway, I guess. And the amount of time wasters they have for simple things like moving through the daily towers and waiting to get your rewards from the slot machine, it just leaves something to be desired. Now, I do think some of this stuff can improve, maybe if they get an actual menu for some of the time towers, giving them intros and actually giving it some personality, that could maybe bump it up to an 8. And if they actually rehauled invasion mode a little bit and gave it more story and actually had the characters talk to you and again interact with you, I would probably give this game a 9. But unfortunately, I don't have high hopes that that'll happen at all in this timeline anyway. What I do have high hopes for is that you will like, subscribe, comment your favorite fatality, let me know why I'm wrong, what guest character you want to see in the future. Personally, I would love to see Mad Max, Snake Plissken, or Shaft.
Shaft. Hotter than Bond, cooler than Bullet. Rated R. If you want to see Shaft, ask your mama.